The American Cotton Shippers Association, also known as AXA, is a trade association primarily made up of cotton merchants. Founded in 1924, AXA members manage the majority of the cotton trade, providing merchandising, delivery logistics, and risk management services to their customers. AXA is grateful to Senators Cindy Hyde-Smith of Mississippi, Katie Britt of Alabama, Roger Marshall of Kansas, and John Boozman of Arkansas for introducing the Buying American Cotton Act of 2025, which will build structural demand for U.S. cotton. AXA urges all cotton industry stakeholders to support this initiative by reaching out to your congressional delegation and requesting their support for this legislation.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Cotton Grower Magazine's Cotton Companion Podcast. I'm Jim Stedman, editor of Cotton Grower, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and colleague, Beck Barnes. Beck, still raining.
Yeah, you know what? Jim, you know this. It has stopped raining long enough to get hot and humid here just in time for my HVAC unit to fry. And so, forgive me to any listeners who hear the box fans blasting here at the home office, but praise God for the invention of the box fan, because I would be in trouble right now without them.
May have to make a run to Tractor Supply and get a barn fan.
And get a what?
Get a big barn fan. That might help.
Yeah, just have all my papers and business cards and everything flying all around like a tornado in here.
Yeah. Well, the good part about it is people can't see us while we're recording this. This is not a visual medium whatsoever. So, anything that would allow our listeners to use their imagination.
I wouldn't be worried about our audience. I'm worried about upper management here at the home office. I'm seeing my office in disarray. Do you know what I'm saying?
No. Aren't all home offices in a bit of disarray? Anyway, we digress. Today, in this episode, we're going to talk about cotton demand and how reductions in those demand numbers worldwide continue to impact cotton prices and the overall industry economy. That's really no surprise to anybody who's part of this business. A few weeks ago, Bob Antoshak, who's a longtime strategic executive in the textiles and apparel industries, wrote an article pointing out that there may be an unexpected and unanticipated reason contributing to cotton's demand slump. Now, Bob knows his business better than anyone else I know, and he's going to join us here in just a few minutes to talk about his suspicions.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Bob is an exceedingly smart and sharp fella. But first, Jim, we want to welcome a couple of sponsors. That's right, sponsors, plural, to this episode of the Cotton Companion. And first up is Corteva Agriscience. Our colleague and custom content manager, Hillary Wynn, recently visited with Kyle Colwell, territory manager at Corteva. And we want to share that conversation with you right now.
Hi, this is Hillary Wynn, Custom Content Manager with Meister Media Worldwide, publisher of Cotton Grower Magazine. My guest today is Kyle Colwell, Territory Manager at Corteva. He is going to discuss the key insect pests that cotton growers in the Mid-South should monitor and control as temperatures rise, along with effective management strategies using Transform WG insecticide. Kyle, welcome to the program.
Hey, Hillary, thanks again for having me, and thank you for your time and recording this.
As cotton growers around the Mid-South continue planting this year's crop, high summer temperatures will soon be here to deliver needed heat units to help push cotton along its physiological journey towards maturity. Those same higher temperatures will increase the likelihood of insect pests reaching thresholds requiring applications to control them. What pests should growers be looking for in June and July?
Yeah, so Hillary, number one on our radar is the tarnished plant bug in the Mid-South. I'm located in Southeast Arkansas, and that is by far our number one pest. We have some secondary pests that'll flare up too with them, the cotton aphid. And this is a pest that, can reproduce really quickly. And we do some things to try to flare them on accident sometimes too. And so when these pests do flare up, they reproduce asexually. So they turn pretty quick. 8 will turn into 64, 64 into 128. So they ramp up fast. And whenever you start seeing the secretion, the honeydew-like secretion on the leaves is kind of when we really start taking action.
How can growers control plant bugs and aphids?
Yeah, Hillary, that's a good question. So Corteva has insecticide Transform WG, which is the standard for plant bug control in the Mid-South. Transform is really a novel insecticide with a unique mode of action that controls sap-feeding pests and insects, including aphids, flea hoppers, plant bugs, and whiteflies.
Where should cotton growers go for more information about Transform?
Yeah, so if you're looking for information about Transform, I always, reach out to university extension agents. They're versed in it, or you can reach out to your Corteva territory manager in the Mid-South.
Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, thanks to Hillary and to Kyle for that segment, and to Corteva for their continued support of the Cotton Companion podcast. We're going to hear more from Hillary in just a few minutes.
That's right. But back in the meantime, let's take a quick look at the most recent USDA crop progress numbers for cotton. This is from the weekly report issued June 9th. So the numbers are still very, very fresh as we record this. Right now, 76% of the 2025 crop has been planted. It's up 10 percentage points in the past week, but it's still 4 points shy of the 5-year average. We're seeing some significant weather-related lags visible in the numbers for Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, and Tennessee compared to their traditional 5-year averages. And with considering the weather issues that we've had in the Mid-South and parts of the Southeast, that's completely understandable. Squaring is now reported in 12% of the total crop. Not surprisingly, that's led by Arizona, South Texas, and South Georgia. And the current crop condition, the first crop condition report for the year shows 49% of the crop rated good to excellent, 30% fair, and 21%, unfortunately, right out of the gate in poor to very poor condition.
Yeah, I suspect that has a lot to do with that. With that rain that's got, everything kind of soggy and behind schedule. So,
Yeah.
but one more, Jim, we got one more item to share. And that is a call out to our audience for suggestions. If you or someone you know is interested in serving the U.S. cotton industry, USDA is seeking nominations of domestic cotton producers from all cotton producing states and importers of cotton and cotton containing products for positions on the Cotton Board. The producers and importers will fill positions for 18 members and 18 alternates. USDA will appoint members and alternates to serve 3-year terms beginning January 1, 2026 to December 31, 2028, with the exception of one member position from Texas and one alternate position from North Carolina, who each will serve a 1-year term ending December 31, 2026. Now, certified producer organizations and certified importer organizations will hold caucuses to nominate 2 qualified persons for each open position in their respective industry segment. Dates and times for each of those state and importer meetings are coming up in July, and you can find that schedule online at both cottonboard.org and, of course, on cottongrower.com. Okay, now, Jim, let's take a break for a message from a new Cotton Companion sponsor we're very excited about, and that's Helm Agro. We want to welcome back our colleague and custom content manager, Hillary Wynn, for a discussion with Tim Eyrich, Vice President of Innovation at Helm.
Joining me today is Tim Eyrich, Vice President of Innovation at Helm. With 41 years of experience in agriculture, Tim has built his career around research, product development, regulatory strategy, and commercialization. Today, he'll be sharing insights on crop nutrition in cotton and its influence on yield. Tim, welcome to the program.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to visit with you.
Absolutely. Now, Tim, most, if not all, cotton is in the ground by now, so growers have already made a lot of decisions. What should they be thinking about next to make the most of this year's crop?
It always be on the top of mind of every cotton grower is his nitrogen use efficiency and how he's taking nitrogen and how the plant utilizes it. What we want to emphasize now is we want to be able to get nitrogen in the plant, but we want to be able to convert it to amino acids and proteins. And a plant that's doing that is going to handle stress better. It's going to handle heat better. It's going to have better water use efficiency. A plant that's not utilizing its nitrates efficiently will always come under heat and drought stress more intensely. Water use efficiency goes down, carbohydrate production goes down. So we want to help them understand how to utilize their nitrates effectively.
What would you encourage cotton growers to think about from a crop nutrition standpoint that they may not be considering?
Well, the first thing is nitrates aren't a standalone. To get a plant to take nitrates and turn it into amino acids and proteins, which basically, step back a little bit, 80 to 90% of the nitrogen that gets in the plant needs to be converted to amino acids and proteins. That's the way the plant works. To do that, nitrates have some companion nutrients they really need to help to get to that final amino acid protein. They need potassium, they need sulfur, they need iron, and they need moly. So what a farmer needs to realize is that thinking about his nitrogen program involves thinking about his potassium program, his sulfur program, his iron program, or his moly. And without thinking of that, you simply can't take nitrates and turn it into amino acids and proteins.
What results have you seen in the field with Sycon?
So Sycon is an interesting product. We actually know the whole genomics background. We know exactly when we put Sycon on the plant, we know what genes were positively influencing. We know what pathways were enriching. So we know a lot about that product. And what we see with Sycon, we put it on the field. Number one, it drives that whole process of taking nitrates and making them into amino acids and proteins. So you see much better nitrogen use efficiency. You see a plant, because we're making amino acids and proteins, you see a plant that can handle the heat and water stress of West Texas, right? We're getting a whole lot hotter in West Texas now. It's drip irrigation. Water and heat stress is always there. We see a plant that actually holds up better in that environment, better foliage quality, better bowl and fruit retention, better bowl fill. You kind of drop to the Eastern Carolinas, we're on a little bit sandier soil, same problem, right? So what we kind of say with Sycon is Sycon creates a plant that wants to create. It wants to create a plant that makes amino acids, that makes proteins, that actually makes a plant that can handle whatever the year throws at it, whether it's hot, whether it's dry, whether it's too wet, because behind every one of those reactions of plants is an amino acid and protein. So we build this very durable plant before it actually ever sees a stress.
What's the most important time to think about crop nutrition?
Before you plant is always the best time, right? To kind of have it all planned out, think about what you're doing. Your high nitrogen uptake period in cotton starts somewhere between match head square and first bloom. So you definitely want to be thinking about it there. And then you want to be thinking about what's my potassium nutrition, what's my sulfur, what's my iron, my moly. So I'm utilizing that nitrates. So right now, as it's coming out of the ground, you ought to be thinking next step. I'm going to be hitting pinhead, match head square. I'm going to start being growing. So I really need to begin to think of what's the next steps I'm at. Reevaluate it. If you've had rain, has anything leached out of your profile? What's your root system? How is it growing? Because the root system has got to take the nutrients up. So those are all things they should be thinking about right now. And then how do I adjust for what my stand establishment weather did?
Where can farmers go to learn more?
They can go to helmcrop.com to learn more about Sycon. They can talk to their retailers in their areas about Sycon. Those are probably two best places to go.
Tim, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you to Hillary and to Tim for that segment. And again, a big thank you to Helm Agro for their support of the Cotton Companion podcast.
Now let's turn our attention to today's discussion and bring Bob Antoshak into our virtual studio. Bob has served as a strategic executive in textiles and apparel for nearly 3 decades, either as a staff member or consultant to a number of organizations and companies around the world. His track record of success is one of the reasons companies are drawn to him. He's also a prolific author, focusing on topics impacting the textile and apparel markets, as well as a good friend of the Cotton Companion. So, Bob, welcome back to the podcast.
Jim, thank you very much. Beck, thank you as well.
Well, Bob, it seems like every time we visit, you have taken on a new challenge. You're currently Vice President of Global Strategic Sourcing and Development at Gray Matter Concepts. Tell us a little bit about Gray Matter Concepts and why it appealed to you.
Yeah, Jim, great question. And again, thanks for the opportunity to chat here. I've consulted all through, I say the last 2 decades of my careers, but solid consulting. And I had an opportunity, I met a client, Gray Matter Concepts, a few years ago. And Gray Matter Concepts is owned and managed by Rachel Landau. It's a woman-owned clothing company in New York City. And we had gotten to know each other. I'd gotten to know the management team, and there was crossover. And at one point it just led to an opportunity. And I've been fortunate in my career where I've had a few of those just kind of appear. And I thought it was time at this stage of my career to kind of, learn a little more hands-on with a private company in the clothing business and see the other side of the cotton. I had consulted to a lot of these brands and companies over the years, but it's kind of neat to be on the inside and to really kind of help with strategy and sourcing. So that attracted me a lot, and it just gave me more focus at this stage of my career. So it was
Okay.
real interest to me, and it's a great company. It's a medium-sized company in New York and growing very rapidly. So that all
What's
appealed to me.
what's the product line?
Their products, and this is another thing too. I am, as you know from looking at me, I'm hardly a fashion model or a supplier. So, but I do understand how to work with SKUs and so forth. So this is a men's basics company. So what it is, we're talking everything like socks, underwear, t-shirts, base layers, things like that. So, and it's become far more cotton focused than it used to be. It used to be almost all synthetic, and now it's moving increasingly towards cotton. So that also was of interest to me, and I think it was a mutual interest because of my background in cotton. So, and this company is very committed to real sustainability, and it's a real opportunity to bring a better product and sustainable practices to a basics kind of product, kind of a mass market kind of product.
Mhm.
And which is neat because a lot of those types of companies tend to ignore that. Okay, but not these folks.
Okay. Well, real quick, if anybody's interested in learning more about it, is there a website?
Yes, please go to greymatter.net.
Okay.
GREY matter.net.
Okay. Great. Okay. Enough for the plugs at this point.
No, thanks.
I think there's certainly no secret that these are difficult times for the cotton industry, and certainly with demand or lack thereof being one of the key drivers, the market challenges the industry is currently facing. Uh, Obviously, we've got a whole lot of competition in the fiber market from polyester and other natural fibers. There's definitely some interest and definitely some concern that cotton's market voice is just not being heard as strongly as it has been in years past. You published a recent article called How Environmental Zeal Backfired on Cotton. And in that, you explained how declining demand may also be an unintended collateral damage from the environmental movement. Now, how did that happen? Can you walk us through your thinking on that? Because obviously, this is not something that's just happened overnight.
No, thanks, Chick. That's a great question. And thanks for reading my story. And it's interesting. I think back. There are two key aspects to this, and I'll deal with the first one second. The first one is this huge overcapacity of synthetics globally. But let's put that to the side for a moment, okay? And let's talk about cotton first, because this leads into why there's so much oversupply of polyester. Um, some years back, not all that many years back, but let's say going back 20 years, I remember when organic cotton kind of became a thing. Maybe it was in or around there. And it really was supported by a lot of brands who said, "Oh, this is what we really need." And they were under pressure from portions of their customer base to use organic cotton because the perception that was kind of perpetrated in the brand community was that it was cleaner. It was somehow better for the environment. It was also an opportunity for them to tell a story that would appeal to part of their market. Okay. And but then the practical issues got in the way. One was that organic group became like this self-perpetuating lobby where they basically were able to this is where it started, um, tar and feather conventional cotton like it was something evil. Okay. GMO, using water and pesticides, conventional growing practices, all these things. And the audience, particularly the buyer audience at the brands, especially at that time, didn't really know. Often these are people making buying decisions that have never been on a farm before. Okay. Now, the practical issues ultimately caught up with them because you can't scale organic very much. So then all of a sudden, you still had this built up desire, though, to find alternative ways of growing cotton. And then at the same time, you had a lot of companies who were searching and saying, well, maybe there are alternative fibers that can help us meet our sustainability goals. We know we got to be green. We want to be this. We want to be that. And a good portion of the trade ended up moving towards synthetics as an alternative, feeling that if they did a recycle program, for example, they'd be okay and their marketing people would be happy with it. and their management would say, okay, this is good. So what you did was, it was kind of like this confluence of interests. People in the organic community and in the environmental community mean well. I'm not criticizing them on that part of it. I'm just saying their focus and intensity and the way they undermined it, in effect, traditional cotton production didn't do any cotton farmers any favors, in my opinion. And the fact of the matter is, in the long run, it helped to make cotton in a lot of ways less competitive in the marketplace. Because at the same time, this is my other point about polyester capacity, the Chinese went ahead and decided to buy up the entire global production of synthetic fibers. And by doing that, you had this horrendous price differential that was building up, making it almost impossible for farmers to ever really get their true value. And if you look at import numbers, if you look at market stats, you'll see, I mean, this has been a gradual bleed over the last 20, 25 years, where all the product coming in here is synthetic, more and more, particularly in apparel. Okay, and a lot of it originates out of China, some other countries, but cotton has really been hit by traditional cotton has been hit by, in a way, they've been kind of in a vice on trying to catch up on the environmental message. And then at the beginning, the industry was a little slow on that, but they've since course corrected. But then on top of it, you have all this synthetic competition where virtually any price could be charged for the product. I mean, the subsidies in China and so forth, plus the massive overcapacity, it's just like it keeps making it increasingly difficult for cotton to be price competitive in the market. So it has to fall back on messaging like, hey, we are really green, we are really sustainable, we do make a better product. And at least for now, though, that message is it's going to have to be a persistent message. And it really puts the industry at a bit of I feel, at a bit of a disadvantage. And then maybe some years before we really, I mean, I hope it's soon where we start to see some turnaround. But, it's a challenge. I hope that answers.
No, that was a great answer, Bob. I'll tell you, I'm thinking back to 2019. I was down in Natchez, Mississippi with BASF as part of their E3 sustainability program. Were you down there?
I was.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
So I was, as I was thinking about this, I was like, I think Bob was there. But we were there with a lot of clothing and apparel, people in sourcing, people in design, down in Natchez and Vidalia, Louisiana, to talk about how you can produce cotton um, in a green way, and traditional cotton, not organic. But I remember being there with it, and I was having a conversation with a guy who does a boutique apparel brand out of Nashville, and he was saying that they had done a year prior, or in the years prior, had set up their own organic cotton farm down in like Alabama or something. And he was like, well, we were going to go all in on this, and that's where we were going to source the stuff for our brand. And it's exactly what you said. They ran in what they soon discovered. These people who were new to farming is like, man, the scale there, the math does not math. It does that. You are not able to produce what you think you might be able to in that way. The problem is scale, which is what you just got done saying. So anyhow,
perfect example, Beck. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, scaling it, wonderful idea. That's great. But then there's also the practical issues. If you're a true organic farmer, uh, and this is something that the disconnect often you get with the brands will say, we need organic, need organic. They don't really care how it's grown, and that the fact that families have to suffer so much physically.
yeah,
It's brutal.
yeah.
It's
It was.
hard, I mean, and not that conventional farming isn't, but the point is organic production can be extra special bad on the family, on the farmer himself. The labor's tough. So, it's just, and then it's a frustrating, one reason why you can't scale it, really.
Yeah.
It's limited. So then we go from there, and then everybody starts to pivot to other alternatives, and we're off to the races. So,
Yeah. So this thing that I just referenced, to BASF's E3 program, which you had a big hand in, that was, gosh, 7 years ago now. Time flies. That was the exception, not the rule. That was a wonderful doing the Lord's work situation where we were educating apparel sourcing people and designers about how cotton is grown in a sustainable way. There wasn't that again. That was the exception, not the rule. There wasn't a whole lot of that going on. We know that cotton is not blameless in our lack of messaging, lack of volume in terms of how loud we were being about this. We are seeing the industry fight back now with this sustainability and traceability programs like the U.S. Cotton Trust Protocol that has come along since that
Yep.
deal in 2019. As well, we see there's more interest in natural fibers at the manufacturer and retail level, kind of generally. We're seeing more discussion among scientists in the media also, and this has been a big thing in the pages of Cotton Grower, Bob, about microplastics and their environmental and human health concerns. I know you are quite aware. So, are we making any inroads with things like Cotton Trust Protocol and sounding the alarm on microplastics, or do we still have an uphill challenge?
Well, again, I think things like the Cotton Trust Protocol are absolutely marvelous. I mean, it gives the industry real substance to present to a brand, right? Because the brands are under pressure, or say the brands are selling to retailers, they're under pressure from retailers to say, well, if we're going to put your stuff in our stores, you got to follow this, this, and that. And many brands ran to other standards around the world over the years and found shortcomings, okay, in terms of how that was handled. Um, Traceability was a problem, okay? Ensuring that standards in the fields were consistent from region to region or more regionally appropriate, depending on where you are. Those were real problems that they had difficulties with. The American cotton industry in particular at that time was just, maybe late to the game, but now they're really engaged, and they're engaged with great programs like the Cotton Trust Protocol. And again, as we saw at the E3 program, the interest was there, the uptake was there. It just that was a great way as a precursor for things like the Cotton Trust Protocol. It showed a lot of brands it could be done, and it could be done using conventional cotton, okay? And I also feel that messaging, I feel there are times where it's appropriate to take the gloves off and point out that the other guy has problems, okay? And whether it's, just acknowledging microplastics as a problem, and the fact that it doesn't biodegrade like cotton does. Okay, cotton goes away, like it's a natural product, so you don't have that kind of waste. Point. It's a truism that the cotton industry needs to be hammering constantly in the marketplace, in my opinion, because again, it's education, and as I've learned over the years, when what different parts of the supply chain have their own belief systems, and it just takes time to crack through that to explain what are the facts. I'm always impressed, like with the ICAC, they're always putting out facts now. I mean, those are important, you know. The cotton grower you guys put out facts, and that's important. The industry, the broader industry, the whole textile supply chain has to have access to that and see it, good and bad, and so that they can make a really intelligent decision on what's the best fibers to be using going forward.
Yeah. And Bob, I don't know anybody who pays closer attention to this type thing than you do. Do you get the sense that we have started to move the needle in terms of the broader public perception in recent years?
I think the perception is definitely up, no question. I think right at the moment, I think we're facing extraordinary times. Just because of what's going on with tariffs and so on. And I've done analyses that kind of show that the tariffs can have kind of a adverse impact on cotton, because it tends to push and encourage the use of cheaper synthetics to help offset the cost of the tariffs. And there's a lot of evidence for that going back to the first Trump administration. So it's a little bit of an irony. So that's not a political statement. That's just I'm trying to just analyze what honestly is a one impact. Okay. And I feel that has encouraged more synthetic consumption. Now, going forward, let's assume all this gets worked out, and the world goes back to some level of consistency and so forth. All things being being even, we can. I think we can expect that cotton can crawl back some market share because of the kind of messaging that's out there. I mean, it is possible. Okay. I mean, cotton's not going away. It's just a question of there's one element in the textile supply chain that feels 20 years from now, it's going to be a luxury fiber. And then there's another group like myself who are like, no, that's not the case. It can bounce back, and it will bounce back. It's just a question of when you have extraordinary times like we do now, that uplift that was beginning to occur got kind of sidetracked because of factors beyond its control.
And well, Bob, while we're talking about China, mentioning China, just a real quick question, obviously, because, we can't ignore their impact on the overall market. Even with all the current geopolitical maneuvering that's going on, how much impact are tariffs going to have on their textile production and trade? I mean, are we in a situation where can the rest of the world compete with them on price, or are we it is what it is, and we're just going to have to figure out ways to work around it?
Well, I was waiting, Jim, I have a very kind of like a really depressing personal life, so I follow trade statistics. I'll talk about doldrums, right? So I was waiting with bated breath for the April import numbers. It was great because that was going to be about the first month we would start to really see the shift in trade. Okay. China's been falling pretty sharply, so it is having an impact on their exports to the U.S. However, you got everybody else who's coming up in a hurry. Pick the country, Bangladesh, Vietnam, places like that. But there's two issues to it. Yeah, some of that's their own homegrown manufacturing, but a lot of it is just relocating Chinese production. And I think what we're seeing is increasingly that production of cut and sew is being supported by Chinese textiles. Okay. So what we're getting is a shift that's going on. Doesn't mean they're going away in net, but it's an odd thing, and it's the problem with, and this even happened with, across the board tariffs where everybody was more or less faced with like difficult tariffs to deal with. So it's accelerating. You can see it. China's been cutting prices for a long, long time. They have a lot of subsidies in place that can help facilitate that. But beyond that, their overall, in general, their overall price structure, I think without subsidies, I think would be really, in this kind of a business, be struggling over time. But they have the advantage of infrastructure, and they do have the advantage still of a qualified workforce for now. So those are factors that are hard to unwind. So that's why it's interesting to see how the product's moving around in Southeast Asia. But I think a lot of it is really Chinese money moving around, being supported maybe by more than likely Chinese textiles. So it's just kind of fascinating to watch it unfold, as we go forward. And somebody's eating the prices. The supply chain's eating it. Whether governments are or not, I don't know. Let our government try to figure that out. But there is movement of product for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think you say it's fascinating. I say it's still frightening.
Yeah.
But there's certainly no lack of continuing use and discussion in this extended industry. We've got a lot of things to navigate our way through here for the rest of this year. So we certainly appreciate your input on this. For those of you who are listening and would like to read Bob's entire article that we've been talking about in this discussion, he has graciously allowed us to post that on cottongrower.com. So be sure to check that out. So Bob, thanks for taking time. We appreciate your input as always.
Jim, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and honor to be here with you guys. Beck, it's always great to talk to markets and, compare ideas and thoughts. And yeah, this is a real pleasure for me. So thank you.
Okay. And I'm sure you're feeling very good about your Yankees these days too.
Yeah, actually I am.
All right. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Thank you both.
Well, all right. That's going to do it for this episode of the Cotton Companion podcast. Thanks again to Bob Antoshak for joining the conversation. And thanks to our sponsors, the American Cotton Shippers Association, Corteva AgriScience and Kyle Colwell, and Helm Agro and Tim Eyrich. Now, as always, thank you, dear listener, for joining us and for your continued support. As always, we hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did like what you heard, please be sure to spread the word and tell your farming friends and neighbors about us. Here's where and how they can find the Cotton Companion podcast.
You can find the Cotton Companion in 3 easy ways. First, go to cottongrower.com/companion, or simply click the podcast tab at the top of the homepage. Second, subscribe to our channel on iTunes or wherever you find your podcasts these days. And 3, sign up for our weekly e-newsletter, the Cotton Grower e-News, that's delivered to your email inbox every Tuesday morning. You can do that by going to cottongrower.com/subscribe. Also, be sure to follow Cotton Grower on social media. We are at Cotton Grower Mag on Twitter. And on Facebook, you'll find us by searching for Cotton Grower Magazine.
The Cotton Companion podcast is produced by Tyler Hatch and Kim Henderson, our talented colleagues, the world headquarters for Meister Media Worldwide in lovely Willoughby, Ohio. I'm Jim Stedman, E-Spec Barnes, and we'll be back with you in a few weeks with another episode of the Cotton Companion. Until then, stay safe.
'Cause God made me a farmer. Yeah, he works and he works and he works and he works all day. God made a farmer.